must be from outer space. And if you're wondering about this crazy world you're in, the human race is one that you can win. You came to join the club the very day you were born. Welcome to the human race. Ears and eyes and arms and legs and fingers and toes. Well, you look just about like me. Hopefully you ended up with only one nose, 'cause how would you look with two or three? There is no other person in the world like you. But don't you worry, you're a people too. Since you are so special, that means I'm special too. Welcome to the human race. Feel like you are going insane, welcome to the human race. And if you've never laughed or if you've never felt pain, you must be from outer space. Although we each have some peculiarities, we all have human similarities. Every single person has a body and a brain. Welcome to the human, welcome to the human, welcome to the human race. Yeah, oh yeah.
Sometimes I hiccup, sometimes I sneeze, sometimes I have to burp, if you please. Although I am unique, I find that I am similar to everybody else. Some days I'm happy, some days I'm blue. Sometimes I catch my breath or catch the flu. Although we're all alike, we're each exactly different from anybody else. Sometimes I hiccup, sometimes I sneeze, sometimes I have to burp.
If you please.
Although I am unique, I find that I am similar to everybody else. Some days I'm happy, some days I'm blue. Sometimes I catch my breath or catch the flu. Although we're all alike, we're each exactly different from anybody else. Sometimes I feel like singing, sometimes I feel uptight. But I know everybody has
Welcome, boys and girls. I'm Grandpa Tyler. Come on and sit a spell. Open your books and read along with me. Our story is titled, Shh, We'll Never Tell. Amy was in the 3rd grade. She was the only girl in her class who hadn't spent the night away from home. It was a time when all her girlfriends were having slumber parties, but she could never go. To make matters worse, her brownie troop was starting to have real overnight campouts. But Amy always made up some excuse why they would have to go without her. The next day at school, she would have to listen to her excited friends telling stories about how much fun they had all had. "Why don't you ever come with us?" someone would always ask. "Who wants to go on a dumb campout and get eaten up by mosquitoes?" she would snap. But the whole time, Amy was really thinking, "I wish I could go. It sounds like so much fun." One day after school, Amy was walking home with her very best friend Susie. "Tonight is that Peanuts special on TV," Susie said. "Want to come over and watch it with me?" Amy started to say yes, but before she could answer, Susie added, "You can spend the night. We'll have so much fun." Thanks anyway, but I really can't tonight. Maybe some other time," Amy replied. But Susie wouldn't give up. She kept on pleading, "We're having tacos for dinner, and afterwards, Mom is going to pop popcorn. You've just got to come." Tacos were Amy's favorite food, and popcorn while watching TV. It sounded so neat. "No," Amy said, "I can't." "You never can," Susie yelled. "See if I ever invite you to anything again." Amy ran all the way home, threw herself on her bed, and sobbed. Her mother heard her crying and came into the room. She stroked Amy's hair and tried to find out what was wrong. "Oh, Mother, all the other girls get to spend the night with each other, and I never get to," Amy cried. "And now Susie will never speak to me again because I've turned her down so many times." Amy cried harder. Amy's mother looked surprised. "Why, Amy, I've never told you that you couldn't spend the night with Susie. I've even offered to let you have your own slumber party." "Oh, Mom," Amy pouted. "You know why I can't spend the night anywhere else?" Amy's mother looked into her eyes. "Is it because you sometimes have accidents at night?" "You know it is," Amy moaned. "What would my friends say if they knew I still wet the bed?" Amy's mother tried to console her. "Honey, you'll grow out of it someday. Some children just take longer than others to get through the night without wetting the bed." The next few weeks went smoothly for Amy. There were no campouts, no slumber parties, and no one invited her to spend the night. Then, one day she came home to the best news she'd heard all year. Her mother greeted her at the door and said, "Guess who's coming to visit? Your Aunt Karen and Wendy." "Hooray!" Amy squealed, dancing around the room. Aunt Karen was her favorite aunt, and Wendy had been like a sister until they had to move away a couple of years ago. She couldn't wait to see them again. Amy's mother got a little nervous as she began to explain, "Amy, they'll be staying here a couple of days. Could you share your room with Wendy? It's only for a few days." Amy whined, "Can't they stay longer? Wendy could sleep with me in my bed." Amy stopped cold. "Oh, no, Mother. What if I have an accident while Wendy's here? I'd just die, and she'd think I was a baby." Amy's mother tried to be reassuring. "Look, Amy, we'll just have to make sure you go to the bathroom before you go to bed. And maybe I can wake you up in the middle of the night." Amy thought for a moment. She wanted to see Wendy so badly. "All right," she finally said. "But I promise you, Mother, if I have an accident, I'll lock myself in my room and never come out." The day finally came. At last, Aunt Karen's car turned into the driveway. Amy ran out of the house just as Wendy threw open the car door. They hugged each other so hard that they collapsed on the lawn, laughing and giggling. It was going to be like old times. The day flew by. Amy and Wendy were together every minute, and neither one could remember when they'd had so much fun. After dinner, their moms let them stay up extra late to watch a scary monster movie. They screamed and clutched each other until the very end. But finally, the moment arrived. "Okay, girls," Amy's mother said. "It's way past your bedtime. Off to bed." Amy's stomach tightened. This was the moment she dreaded all day long. She remembered to go to the bathroom, then crawled into the double bed next to Wendy. "Oh, please," Amy thought. "I just can't wet the bed, not tonight." Wendy began chattering again, and Amy soon forgot her problem. They talked for a while until they finally drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Amy woke up first. Before she even opened her eyes, she began to feel around for the familiar wet spot in her bed. She reached over and touched something unfamiliar. "Hey," Wendy said. "What are you doing?" "Oh, I forgot," Amy giggled. "You're here." Amy was sliding out of her side of the bed when her hand brushed the dreaded wet spot. "Oh, no," Amy thought. "What am I going to do?" She had to think fast. "Hey, Wendy," she said, "some great cartoons are on TV now. Let's watch TV while we have breakfast. I'll make the bed later." "Okay," Wendy said. "You go turn on the TV. I'll be right there." "Phew," Amy thought as she poured cornflakes into 2 bowls. "I'll slip in and make the bed while she watches TV, and she'll never see the spot." As Amy carefully carried the bowls of cereal down the hall to the den, she glanced into her room just in time to see Wendy pulling back the covers to the bed. "Stop!" Amy yelled. "What are you doing?" "I'm just making the bed," Wendy replied. "You go on. It'll just take me a minute." Amy put down the bowls and grabbed the covers. "No," she shouted. "I want to make the bed." Both girls tugged on the covers. Before they knew what happened, they had pulled the covers completely off the bed. Horrified, they stared at the bed. What they saw was completely unexpected. There was not one wet spot, but 2, one on each side of the bed. Neither Amy nor Wendy could believe her eyes. "You mean you too?" Amy said as she pointed to the spot on Wendy's side of the bed. "Yep," Wendy said. "I was going to make the bed so you wouldn't find out." "That's what I was going to do," Amy said. And with that, both girls burst into laughter. For the rest of the day, every time the girls looked at each other, they broke up laughing. They started telling each other jokes that no one else understood. How much is 1 spot plus 1 spot? Wendy would ask. 2 spots, Amy would answer. Then they would start laughing all over again. My goodness, Amy's mother said. What's so funny? Shh, we'll never tell, Amy said, winking at Wendy. We just like to put each other on the spot. And with that, both girls laughed until they thought they'd die.
There's nobody else like me. There's nobody else like me. I'm not a horse or a hog or a fish or a frog. I'm a human, can't you see? There's nobody else like me. There's nothing else I'd rather be. There's nobody else, no, there's nobody else like me. I am an individual, unique in every way. And I know there is a purpose for me. I discover it every day. It feels so good to be human. I'm not a squirrel or a squid or a skunk. I'm a special person. I'm custom made, not just a pile of junk. There's nobody else like me. There's nobody else like me. I'm not a horse or a hog or a fish or a frog. I'm a human, can't you see? There's nobody else like me. There's nothing else I'd rather be. There's nobody else, no, there's nobody else like me. There's nobody else in the whole wide world like me.
I can make up a song, I can draw a giraffe. I can play on my own, I can make you laugh. I am creative, and I just want to stay. Yeah, I was made to be creative in my own special way. I do have a wonderful mind. I do have a wonderful mind. I can create, I can think. Do have a wonderful mind. Well, there's so much I can learn if I will just use my mind. Many new things to see, so much beauty to find. I'm an explorer, and I just want to say, I was made to be creative in my own special way. Woo! I do have a wonderful mind. Yeah, I do have a wonderful mind. I can create, I can think. Ooh, do have a wonderful mind.
My thoughts are all my own, they're made up in my mind. Sometimes they're not so good, sometimes they're the right kind. All my thoughts are up to me, they can be what I want them to be. That is life's gift to me, it's a part of being free. My thoughts are important thoughts. To me, they are what's real. They tell me how to act. They tell me how to feel. When my thoughts are down and out, I feel sad and want to pout. When my thoughts are happy and bright, then my day day turns out alright. My thoughts. Sometimes I feel so stupid, so boring, so dull. I don't seem to do anything well. Other kids get good grades or play baseball or sing. Me, I can hardly do anything. Sonia, that's not so. 'Cause I watched you play with your dog, and you taught him tricks hardly any dogs do. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm an animal trainer. 'Cause that's the biggest and best thing I do. Take a look around, and you're bound to notice everyone is different from everyone else. We're all unique, and we all should know it. Instead of wasting time acting like someone else. Sometimes I feel so stupid, so boring, so dull. I don't seem to do anything well. Other kids get good grades or play baseball or sing. Me, I can hardly do anything. Michael, that's not so. 'Cause I've known you such a long time, and you're always so understanding and kind. You really think so? Maybe you're right. Maybe understanding's not easy to find. Take a look around, and you're bound to notice everyone is different from everyone else. We're all unique, one of a kind, and we all should know it. Instead of wasting time acting like someone else. 'Cause we're doing fine when we're being ourselves.
Welcome, boys and girls. I'm Grandpa Tyler. Come on and sit a spell. Open your books and read along with me. Our story is titled Small Is O.K. Steve watched the football team going through its drills on the first day of practice. He had always told himself that if he wanted something badly enough and was willing to work hard enough, he could do anything. But he had never wanted anything so badly as this, nor had he ever worked so hard for anything in his whole life. So why didn't he make the football team? Steve felt a warm hand on his shoulder. Sorry, Steve. It was the assistant coach speaking. You're just too small. Maybe next year. Yeah, sure, Steve answered as he turned to head for home. Maybe next year. It seemed as if he had been hearing that all his life, especially when it came to his size. But here he was, a junior in high school, and only 5 feet 3 inches tall. The promise of maybe next year was looking less promising all the time. Steve could see the familiar sign ahead that read Kennybrook Farms Champion Thoroughbreds. Kennybrook had been home for Steve for almost 3 years. His dad was head trainer on the farm and always encouraged Steve to work with the horses. It never took much to talk Steve into working around the farm, because next to football, he loved horses more than anything in the world. When Steve reached the gate, he headed straight for the stables. The horses were the best company around. They always seemed to understand him. As Steve wandered from stall to stall, watching the horses munching on their evening meal, his father walked up and put his arm around Steve. "I heard the bad news, son," he began. "I'm sorry about your not making the football team, but hey, how about coming back and working for me after school? You know, last summer you were turning into the best exercise boy I've worked with yet." "Thanks, Dad," Steve pouted. "I know you're trying to make me feel better. It's just that I wanted to play football so badly." "I'm not just trying to make you feel better, son. I could really use someone your size." Steve's dad's voice trailed off. He knew he'd hit a sore spot. "Not you too, Dad," Steve moaned. "Is my size all anyone can ever notice about me?" "Of course not. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings," his dad said. "But why are you so obsessed with this idea of playing football?" Steve thought of his constant daydreams of running down the field with the ball tucked securely under his arm. He could hear the people in the stands screaming with excitement and pictured the cheerleaders yelling his name. Touchdown after touchdown he would score, and all to the cheers of the fans. "Steve," his dad's voice brought him back to reality. "Oh, yeah?" Steve said. What did you say?" "I said," his dad re-emphasized, "why do you want to play football so badly?" Steve was too embarrassed to tell his dad the real reason. "I don't know," Steve fibbed. "I guess I just like the game." "I'd really like it, son, if you'd start working with the horses again." "Yeah, sure, Dad," Steve said, and together they walked back to the house. Steve began to spend every minute of his free time working with the horses. He helped feed them, brush them, and even clean their stalls. The whole time he would talk to them and carry on conversations just as if they could understand. It wasn't long before Steve became the top exercise boy on the ranch. Without using whips or anything other than tender, loving care, he always got the best work out of the horses. It was almost as if they understood who he was and wanted to do their very best for him. He only wished he could handle a football the way he could handle the horses. One day, Steve was coming around the far turn of the track on the back of Wilty B, the farm's prized thoroughbred. The horse had always been a handful for most of the other boys, but Steve was riding him with all the control and style of a real pro. Steve's dad clicked the stopwatch as Steve brought the horse across the finish line. "The best time ever!" his dad exclaimed. "And who might that be, riding my most prized possession?" Steve's dad had been so excited that he hadn't heard the owner of the ranch come up behind him. "Mr. Kenny, I didn't see you," Steve's dad said, a little embarrassed. "Who is that on Wilty B?" Mr. Kenny asked again. "That, Mr. Kenny," Steve's dad said proudly, "is my son." Steve eased Wilty B around the track slowly to cool him off, and was walking him over to see what his track time was. "How'd we do, Pop?" Steve asked, ignoring the man standing next to his dad. "Very well," Steve's dad started. But before he could finish, Mr. Kenny broke in. "Not just very well, my boy. Fantastic is a more suitable word. I haven't seen anyone handle my horses like that for some time." "Thank you, sir," Steve mumbled. "I'd better get him back to the stables and cool him down." Steve jumped off the horse and turned to go. "Hold on," Mr. Kenny said. "Maybe you should stay and hear what I have to say." "Yes, sir," Steve said, staring at the ground. You may have heard, Mr. Kenny began, that Joe, my best jockey, broke his leg last week. I need a new rider for the races this weekend. How about your boy here? Well, I don't know, Mr. Kenny. He never actually raced before. What do you think, Steve? You really mean it? Steve asked. I sure do, Mr. Kenny chuckled. I guess I'll see you two at the track. For the next few days, Steve and his dad were walking on air. Steve would lie in bed and think about how he would race Wilty B on Saturday. He would ease him out of the gate and hold him back until the final stretch, then let him go full steam. Who knows, Steve thought one night, we might even win. Steve smiled as he drifted off to sleep. He really did love his horses. By the time Saturday arrived, Steve's excitement had turned to fear. This was all a little more serious than just exercising the horses. He was trying to think of some way to get out of the race when his dad burst into his room, a bundle of excitement, rambling on about how he had always dreamed of this day. As they drove together to the racetrack, Steve thought, there's no getting out of it now. The racetrack seemed like a madhouse. Steve had been there many times before, but never had he noticed the huge crowds of people milling around. Steve felt himself getting sick and wished he were anywhere but where he was. He hardly remembered getting weighed and his father's boosting him up onto Wilty B's back. As he was being led to the starting gate, he fought back the urge to turn his horse and run the other way. But there he was, lined up with all the other riders, waiting for the bell to ring and the gates to open. And they're off! Steve could barely hear the announcer over the sudden pounding of hoofs. He was numb all over as Wilty B exploded out of the starting gate. My plan, Steve thought, I've got to hold him back till the final turn. Steve pulled gently back on the reins and slowly gained control of himself and the horse. He leaned as far forward as he could and talked to his horse. Easy, Wilty B, he said. We can't go just yet. They seemed to be losing ground by the time they hit the last turn, but Steve eased his horse around with control. Hang on, Wilty B, Steve said. Just a little bit farther. They hit the final stretch and Steve yelled, Now! He gave Wilty B full rein. The horse spurted ahead, passing the other horses one by one until they were in the lead. And the winner, Wilty B by a length, the announcer yelled as Steve and his horse sailed across the finish line. At that moment, Steve suddenly noticed all eyes were on him. People poured out of the stands as he and Wilty B made their way to the winner's circle. Steve could not believe his eyes. They were all patting him on the back and congratulating him as if he were some hero. All he did was ride a horse around a track, something that he loved to do and that seemed very easy to him. In the winner's circle, Steve's dad rushed up and gave him a big hug. You were great. I knew you could do it. Mr. Kenny came up to Steve and shook his hand. You did a fine job, Steve. Come to my office Monday morning. I'd like to talk to you about your future. Steve lay in bed that night going over the day, trying to savor every last moment. Everything he had dreamed about had come true that day. Maybe he didn't carry a football across the goal line, but the crowd still thought he was great. The best part of all was that not one person had said anything about his size. For the first time in his life, Steve really could feel big and important. Well, maybe not exactly big, but definitely important. Steve rolled over and chuckled. I guess I'm just the right size after all.